Now, to encourage you, I want to introduce you to one of the best extemporaneous speakers that I know, a man who's brilliant, who was at the founding of PayPal, working with Peter Thiel, who was also Mike Huckabee's. What was your official title with Governor Huckabee? Policy Director in Arkansas, for now the current ambassador to Israel, who's celebrating a great win this week. And he's done so many amazing things in a remarkable lifetime. If you follow him on X, he has built an incredible following. I'll go somewhere like I was with Marnie and I in Madison. We were with friends who are daughter of the founder of Southwest Airlines. And I said, you know, my friend Rod lives in Destin. And they said, which Rod? I said, Rod Martin. You know Rod Martin? I said, yeah, I know Rod Martin. Who is following you? Jared Kushner just signed up to follow him on X. He is an incredibly brilliant thinker and orator and really accomplisher of great and mighty things. And so I want to introduce you to my friend, Dr. Rod Martin, to share with you tonight about gold and leadership. Rod?
Thank you, sir.
Let me gather my coins. You can't have them.
I don't know. I might use them as a prop. I'm so grateful you're here. A lot of you came a very long way. One gentleman came all the way from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, for heaven's sake. When I was 3, we lived in Moscow, so I know how far that is, although I don't have tremendous memories of it, but I've been back. I've spoken at the college and stuff like that. So some of you have come, I'm sorry? Alaska is here. Jason's here. Jason came a little further. See, the thing is, well, that's the beauty of Anchorage, Alaska. It's so central. It's about the same distance to New York or London or Beijing, you know? Why would you not want to live there? I kind of would, actually, but I'm a Floridian, so I'm not moving. I want to thank you. It took a lot of effort to be here. It took a lot of effort if you came 30 minutes. I mean, this is a weekday night. You could be doing virtually anything, and if you're like me, you have more work to do than you can get done in a day, and you're here. This is an amazing place. This is a place filled with people like you. And no one's heard of it, except people like you. You know, we'll have meetings here, and there'll be billionaires in the room funding some crazy new technology that's going to change the world. We'll have legislators in here that go back to their state capitals and lay the foundation for a better order and a better future for all of our people, and nobody even knows it's going on. So much of life is like that. 2 men sit in a coffee shop and sketch something out on a napkin, and it becomes a unicorn, some multi-billion-dollar company. 2 men sit in a coffee shop, and one of them sketches out the Laffer curve on a napkin and changes the course of economic history, certainly in this country and in others that have paid attention to it, like Argentina is doing now. And you know, they're getting all kinds of bad press because they're doing all the right things. You know, what else is new? You're here. You're doing the hard thing. And that's essential because the truth is everybody needs a leader. Now, those of you who are elected, you have a higher appreciation of this, but even you need leaders, because what's the first thing you do when you gather in the state senate or the state house? You elect leadership. Even leaders need leaders. Moms are incredible leaders of children, but they need their husband to show some leadership in the family. A husband needs a pastor who will show some leadership in the church, some deacons who will come alongside and give advice that the younger men just lack. And by the way, I mean, is there anything dumber than a young man? Except, maybe a teenage girl or slime mold or something. I mean, we all are on this incredible learning curve. I so find myself jealous of Abraham or better, Methuselah. These guys, because I work with guys in their 70s and 80s, and they just know so much more than I do. I'm 56 now. I know more than the guys who are 36, and I certainly know more than I did when I was 36. But that learning curve is quite impressive if you actually make use of your time and you're wise and you study and all the things, because experience just accumulates. And it's extraordinary what we gain that we can't really put into words. Just knowing how to do things, knowing how something's going to work out. You can just look at it and see. And I can imagine these guys who aren't 56 but 560 in Genesis. They probably didn't even have to write books or do TV shows. They could just wink at each other and it's a whole encyclopedia. We don't get to do that today. Maybe we will someday. There are a lot of really good things happening in biotech, and clearly the human life expectancy could be longer. It was 47 years old in 1900, and now you're going to live a little longer than that on average. So clearly good things are happening. But as you accumulate that experience and as you accumulate that knowledge, you're in a better position to help those who are coming after. And the day will be when we are gone and hardly anybody remember we were there. So what you leave behind is essential, but it's a form of leadership. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is what you do. And people will follow the leader even when he doesn't have the title. And he won't follow the guy who has a title but isn't a leader. And there's this wonderful scene in the Alamo about this, the Billy Bob Thornton Alamo, and they're having this fight between Jim Bowie and William Barrett Travis, and Travis has the title. His entire militia follows Jim Bowie because he's showing leadership and Travis is showing a uniform. And Travis grows exponentially in the course of that fight, of course, and we honor him. But he did in part because he watched himself be humbled by the difference between himself and the very rough around the edges Bowie. He learned. A man who didn't even like him and who he didn't like and he didn't recognize as his leader at all taught him what he needed to be the man he became. See, you have a constituency. If you're elected, you especially have a constituency. You can define it very clearly, but it doesn't really matter who you are. Every single person has a constituency, and they don't know who it is. It's very much like the church visible and the church invisible. And we all know what the church invisible is. That's the church on Wednesday night. But in reality, as you know, that's the group of people who are actually believers. Their names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. We can't see that. Charles Haddon Spurgeon said, I wish that God had painted a yellow stripe down the backs of the elect so I would know who they are. But since he didn't, I will preach Christ to all flesh everywhere. There's the church visible. They show up on Sunday morning. Some of them tithe. Some of them sing. Then there's that church invisible. You don't know who they are. That's the constituency you need to care about. You need to care about the other one. But you need to care about the fact that somebody's looking at you and you don't even know it. And that's true for all of us. That's not just our elected leaders, that's everybody. Somebody's watching you all the time. Those of you who are parents, you know those little eyes are on you at the most inconvenient moments, and they're always there. Except when you want them to be, of course, and that's another thing. But they are always looking to somebody, and some of them are looking at you. So what you do matters. What you do matters a great deal. We're here to do something that matters. I can't begin to express to you how important it is that you lead in this time, because there's a great crowd here, but it needs to be about 1,000-fold. They aren't here. That's fine. They don't need to be, because you are. You go and take the message to them. And what is the message to them? Well, it starts with the understanding that we have one. And I know that sounds like a silly thing, but it isn't, because here's the truth. Every major institution in this country is in the business of convincing you that you don't have a legitimate message at all. Now, and let's think about that. Are you allowed to talk about religion in the public square? No. Well, that's not what the First Amendment says. In fact, the First Amendment says the opposite. The First Amendment has a section on freedom of speech. It has a section on free exercise of religion. It has a section on assembly. It has a section on press. Let me try this another way. The other side always has a book. If you're talking about Hamas, they have a book. Do they worry too much about separation of mosque and state? You ever hear them worry about it? Do you ever hear them say, oh, well, I want to say this thing about jihad, but I guess I shouldn't, because that's mixing religion with government? No. Do the Marxists apologize for Das Kapital or the Communist Manifesto or Mao's Little Red Book? Do the communists ever suggest that what they have isn't a legitimate blueprint for all of life? Not just for what they do in the state legislature this year, no, for everything. We call that a religion. A religion is an all-encompassing worldview that actually is cohesive and orders everything. It is the framework through which you see all things. There's nobody on this earth more religious than a communist. They make Hamas look kind of like the Wednesday fellowship supper. I mean, these guys are absolutely intense, and they want to reorder everything. The critical theory people, that's just rebranded communism, in case you missed it. And it's very simple. Antonio Gramsci, who was active in the 1920s and 30s, so about 100 years ago, was an Italian Marxist who was deeply concerned by the then pressing issue of his day, which was, why has the communist revolution not happened in the industrialized countries the way Marx predicted that it would? And of course, I can answer that question because Marx was an idiot, but that's not really the point. They had to answer this question. And so Gramsci did not invent what we call critical theory, but he is its grandfather. And after a while, we got men like Herbert Marcuse and Horkheimer and Adorno and others who came along and formulated something called critical theory. And you don't really probably think about critical theory that much, but you think about it subsets a lot these days. Critical race theory, queer theory, radical feminism, post-colonial theory, and on and on and on. I mean, there are so many, you just can't count them all, because that's how intersectionality works. We constantly have to create an intellectual framework for you to be part of a smaller and smaller minority. We want you to feel hated and oppressed by the whole world. And the only salvation for you is if you and the other oppressed groups group up together and take the leadership of the vanguard party, which is going to save you by redefining truth. What do you think transgenderism is? It's an effort to assert the right to redefine truth. It's exactly what Eve does in the garden. What is Eve really doing in the garden? She's saying, I don't like the rules God made. I will remake the world in my image. That's exactly what transgender theory and critical race theory, all these things do. And they are, as in the case of communism, as in the case of Islam, as in the case of all these other things, it's a Christian heresy. You may or may not have thought about that, but it's a Christian heresy. It takes the truth and twists it, because the devil can really only counterfeit. It's the only thing he can do. He can't create. There's only one creator. So he takes what exists and twists it to his purpose. And here we have, in critical theory in particular, although this is also true of classical Marxism, because really, didn't I just tell you, it's all the same thing. They just changed the labels for a different audience. Critical theory turns out to be quite effective in the industrialized world, largely because it's aimed at 20-year-old gender studies majors and English lit people. And it works on them because it weaponizes your guilt against yourself and against especially your parents. And of course, by creating this hierarchy of different minorities, they don't have the nasty failed feature of classical Marxism that required you to think of yourself as part of the proletariat, the oppressed working class. That didn't sell in America. Everybody in the working class wants to be in the upper class. And they don't want those people torn down. They want to be like those people. We actually have a culture based on Christianity, even when we aren't Christians. And that culture refuses to covet. It refuses to envy. So it cheers people when they succeed. I don't want Alabama to win the SEC, but I'm happy for them when they do. I'd be happier if the Razorbacks won, but that ain't likely to happen. Just like the Cowboys should win the Super Bowl every year, but for some reason they don't. I don't get it. But I'm happy for the guys who do. Much of the world can't do that. All of these isms assert the opposite of redemption. Let's just focus on the dominant one we face in America. In critical theory, and we'll just take critical race theory as the subset du jour. In critical race theory, you are defined as an oppressor or an oppressed. You are defined theoretically based on your most superficial features, which of course is antithetical to Christianity. And you are defined in reality by what you believe and who you obey, which is also a lot like Christianity, except not, because we're not going to follow God. We're going to follow the party. Well, who is the party? Well, in Russia, of course, it was the Communist Party, and you had specific things. Critical theory is a lot more nebulous. It's a lot more fluid. So the party might mean a lot of different things, but somebody somewhere is defining these things. For example, Ben Carson isn't black. I don't know if you knew that. He's just not. How could he be? He's a Republican. Really? Joe Biden told you and everybody thought he was being dumb or making a joke. No, he's dead serious. If you aren't for me, you ain't black. Why? because the party gets to define reality. If the party says that you are a woman, then you are. And if the party says that you are a woman, some Supreme Court justice is going to say, I don't know how to define that. It's funny, when they're talking about women's issues and the Republican war on women and all these things, they understand exactly what a woman is. When they're talking about abortion, they understand exactly what a woman is. But all of a sudden, the definition goes out the window, and you think it's hypocrisy. Wrong. It's entirely consistent if you just read to the end of 1984, where Orwell puts in the words of O'Brien as he is breaking Winston, 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 5. And Winston won't break, and he won't say it. There's also a Star Trek episode where the Cardassians do that to Captain Picard, and it's with lights. But, and he goes through this long stretch, and finally, Winston is ready to break. He's ready to actually just go with the brainwashing. And O'Brien says, you know what 2 + 2 actually equals? 2 + 2 equals whatever the party tells you. Now that's totalitarianism. It takes a lot of different forms, but you have to understand it for what it is because you're leaders. It is a rival religion. It is an alien worldview. It is a Christian heresy in which people are defined as sinless and irredeemable. There's that word. You will recall that Hillary said that we're all deplorable and, in fact, irredeemable. What did she mean? Well, that's simple. If you're defined as black, which may or may not include you being black, by the way. Bill Clinton, you will recall, was the first black president. Everybody remember that? I think everybody in here is old enough to remember that. How does that make sense? Makes perfect sense from this point of view. And Ben Carson isn't black. How does that make sense? Makes perfect sense from this point of view. We define a group. We say that it must think what the group must think. We say that here are the leaders for that group. Did they get to pick their own leaders? Of course not. That's just silly. We've got Ibram Kendi to lead them. We've got Robin DiAngelo to lead them. Robin DiAngelo is white. Does it matter? No. Of course not. She's blacker than Ben Carson because she believes the right things and she wrote the right books. So you are defined, if you're part of that group, as incapable of sin. You say, what do you mean? Haven't you heard Democrats tell you at some point that a black person cannot be racist? You've heard that, right? Okay. The reason you've heard that is their framework. This is not just some random foolishness. This is a religious tenet. An oppressed group cannot oppress. Well, what about Barack Obama? He was the president of the United States. He has power. Isn't power dynamics the crux of everything? The powerful oppress the weak, and Barack Obama was powerful. Wrong. Why? Well, because he's black. And so even though he had the nuclear codes, he cannot be powerful. Even though he had immense power, and he sure enough used it, and they all cheered for him to use it, they saw it as a revolutionary act because he's part of an oppressed class. Bubba, by contrast, a 379-pound disabled white guy in a trailer park in Arkansas, Bubba is powerful. Bubba is an oppressor. Bubba is more powerful than Barack Obama. Say, this is just nonsense. No, this is a religion which defines the nature of reality every bit as much as Christianity does. Christianity defines reality with, in the beginning, God created. Now, what does that mean? That means he made all of it. If you make something, do you own it? Yes. If you own it, do you get to make rules for it? Yes. Not only that, if you design something, you kind of know how it works. So, if I'm the Ford Motor Company and I make a Mustang, and I tell you that you should change the oil every 10,000 miles, darndest thing. You just don't do that, just ignore it, go 20,000, 30,000. At some point that we can't be sure of from car to car, your engine's gonna burn up. And you can rail at the heavens and it isn't gonna fix your car. Because God's rules are not just rooted in reality, they are reality. The laws of gravity and the laws of sexual morality, honestly, not a dime's worth of difference. Go out and cheat on your wife and see how well that'll work out for you. You might get away with it for a while. Good luck. All these things reflect the Creator's design. This is how things work optimally. If you do these things, things will go well. If you don't do these things, things will go poorly. If you execute justice, Washington, D.C. will have one murder in 2 weeks versus countless murders every day. If you actually prosecute Jim Comey, maybe his successors won't go do the stuff Comey did. If you treat the high and mighty the same as the common man, if you have equal justice for all of them, if you actually have due process for them, and you actually expect that we aren't going to convict anybody on the testimony of less than a couple of witnesses, and maybe some of that's physical evidence like DNA, that's all fine, that's a different speech. But we're going to actually give them a fair shake. We're going to actually recognize the rule in Proverbs that that every man seems right until the next makes his case. We're going to actually acknowledge these realities and we're going to go with them, and you get a better system. You get a free system. It's how you got the U.S. Constitution. You've got separation of powers, not because they thought it was a good idea, not because they studied some book somewhere, but because they were children of the Great Awakening. And they just understood in their bones the fallenness of man. So if man is fallen, and every man is fallen, if every person in this room is a sinner, and every person outside this room is also a sinner, if you give them unfettered power with no checks and balances, they're going to pick it up like a club, beat you over the head, and take your stuff, which is what the Democrats do in your state legislature every day. Now, why am I belaboring all this? I don't even know what to call it exactly. Is it theology? Is it political philosophy? Is it, in some senses, it's economics, certainly constitutional history. Why am I taking time to say all this? Because the leaders have to understand this. The whole world is telling you all day, every day, that you don't have a right to bring what you believe about the nature of reality to any of your policy debates. Why? Because if they get to set the terms of what is and is not real, you already lost. That's why they say, oh, Christians shouldn't be talking about Christianity in the public square. Yeah. If I'm McDonald's, I don't want anybody talking about Burger King in the public square either. That's what they're saying. They're not saying religious belief is illegitimate. They're saying your religious belief is illegitimate. And by the way, that may be civil religion. Maybe you're not a Christian. I am a Christian, and I encourage you to be a Christian. But if you aren't a Christian and you're still in this room, first of all, repent and be saved. Second, doesn't matter for this purpose because I'm assuming everybody in this room actually believes in the Constitution, actually believes in the ideas of the Founding Fathers. That's what conservatism in the American context means. It means conserving the principles of the American Revolution. I would contend that they are a lot more Christian than most of your professors told you, and I have actually personally read every single thing all of the Founding Fathers wrote, down to grocery lists. So I actually know a little bit about the way they thought. And I can tell you that these people gave you a system based on a coherent philosophy, a worldview, in Francis Schaeffer's word, that you must stand upon and you must not apologize for. Those people who are looking at you that maybe you don't even know they're looking at you, they're taking their cues from you. It doesn't matter if it's 700,000 people in a congressional district or 7 people down at the church. It doesn't matter. You don't know who those people are. One of those little munchkins down at the church may be the next Hudson Taylor, or the next Ronald Reagan, or the next Thomas Edison. You don't know. Wouldn't it be nice if Elon Musk were a Christian? Wouldn't it be nice if he were a real Republican? I mean, that would be good. You don't know when a word fitly spoken to somebody has globe-girdling consequences. You just never know. So you need to be on. You need to understand what you're about, and you need to be able to unapologetically express it in the way that Charlie always did. And he wasn't unkind, but he always questioned their premises, he always asserted his own, and he had the debate. And that's what leaders do. If leaders don't do that, the other side's going to win 100% of the time. You're what's standing in the gap. The Marines are standing between us and a lot of very hostile people. You are standing between us and the very hostile neighbors all around us who either don't understand the truth or actively reject it. You are the watchman on the wall. You are the influencers. You are the apostles. You are the prophets. You are the priests. You know, not in a religious sense. You're the men and women raised up for this very purpose in this time. Now, Rod, what does that have to do with gold? Well, not a whole lot. I can talk about gold all day, but we're going to have to wrap this up. So I'll tell you about gold, and it's super simple. Gold has kept its value for about 6,000 years. So Kevin had the coin and the $20 bill up here, and he said, you know, this one's worth $4,200 and this one's worth $20. It's exactly the opposite of that, and Kevin can explain that better than anybody, so I'm not picking on him or anything. The truth is that the dollar has lost 87% of its value since 1971. I'm not as worried as some of my friends are about it being replaced as the reserve currency anytime very soon, because I'm very aware of the economic troubles of China. I'm very aware of the demographic collapse in progress. I'm very aware that a few years ago, Russia had an economy just barely the size of California, and now it's about half of that. So I'm not as worried in the short term about that. What I am worried about is fraud, because when you say this dollar is worth $1, but it's actually lost 87% of its value in just not that many years, you're robbing the poor. You're robbing real people. The wealthy can absolutely do things to counter that. We all have means to get around the inflation tax. But the poor single mom who's working 2 shifts down at the plant to raise her kids and put braces on Johnny does not have that luxury. but you can give it to them. What does this have to do with all that other stuff I was saying? Because one of those rules that is rooted in your worldview is the idea of honest weights and measures. Another one of those rules is you shall not steal. The 10th commandment, by the way, is you shall not even think about it. That's what coveting is. Your worldview dictates that you take stands on these things, and you shouldn't apologize for where it came from. They don't apologize for where their stuff comes from. They don't even apologize when all their stuff just came from the talking points from the DNC. I mean, they'll just talk palaver all day long, and then tomorrow when they change, they'll do something else. Because 2 + 2 = whatever the party tells you. Orwell taught us that. Folks, you are the leaders. The biggest theft in human history is going on right here. And again, the people we're harming are the poorest among us. What does God say about taking care of the poor? You know what God does not say? He does not say have giant welfare programs. He says don't rob them. They need giant welfare programs because we're taking everything from them, which, by the way, is not accidental. It's to create the dependency that makes government God. Now, it's a secular God. It's not a supernatural God. The Marxists, in all their different forms, are materialists. They believe that all that exists is matter in motion. They're not asserting godhood in the sense that we do. They're asserting godhood in the sense that Pharaoh did. You will bow down and worship me. Caesar Augustus did. Joseph Stalin did. Fidel Castro did. That's what we're talking about. Kim Jong-un. We can't question dear leader. Because these are rival worldviews. You must not apologize for yours. And you must stand on the implications of them. We are not allowed to have the kind of tax structure that we have in this country. We should not, and I'm so happy with Ron DeSantis actually taking the bold step to go after the abolition of property tax, because I don't understand how we can look ourselves in the mirror while we ask some widow whose husband paid off her house 25 years ago to pay an ever-increasing rent payment to the state. It's wrong. It's immoral. But Rod, that'll mess up our school funding formula. Raise a different tax. They can afford it because you got rid of the property tax. We got to actually look at things from a coherent view and determine what is just, and then do justice and do mercy. Because these are what the leaders must do. We're not here about property tax. We're also not here about child rape. We're also not here about all kinds of things we could be here about, but they all flow from the same coherent worldview. And what I'm here to tell you is they do from the left also. All these nonsensical things aren't nonsensical. You wonder why there's a Queers for Palestine? When the head of Hamas will tell you, if those people ever came to Gaza, we would kill them immediately. Why is there a Queers for Palestine? Because they hate America. It's not about Palestine. They don't care about Israel. They don't care about Israel except insofar as if you could delegitimize Israelis' presence in that land, you could delegitimize all of your presence in this one. That's it. Because America is the most powerful force in the world for good. I give you just one example of that. We provide 6 times as much money, just American Christians, 6 times as much money as all other Christians on the planet put together for international missions. Wow. And our churches are kind of struggling. Everybody wants to badmouth American Christianity, and they're not wrong. But wow. We have the strongest military. We have the strongest sense of right and wrong. We have the strongest justice system, even where it's corrupt. It's better than a lot of places. You wouldn't want to be in a Mexican prison. all that we have asserts, first of all, the idea that people ought to be able to rule themselves. We shouldn't have to be ruled from London. We shouldn't have to be ruled from Brussels. We shouldn't have to be ruled from Moscow. Neither should people in Czechoslovakia or India. They should get to rule themselves. That goes against globalism 1,000%. And second, that we should live in a limited government with checks and balances such that an elite cannot rule us like a modern day aristocracy. And that's absolutely anathema to everything they're trying to do. Because the whole point of the left is to substitute their aristocracy for the old one. That's not what they're going to call it, but that's what it is, and we've had a century of it to see. So what I'm telling you is, all of these issues are connected. You can have different opinions on exactly how to apply the various principles to the various issues. That's fine. We're a free country. We get to debate, just like Charlie. But what you can't do is throw out the worldview that informs it. You can't let them tell you that what you believe is illegitimate. No, reject the premise. Stand on the principles you hold and apply them the best you can to the circumstances you have, which is going to look different in one state from another a lot of the time. I'm really, really proud of the 5 states that have actually gone ahead and done this. I hope your states will too. What this does is, first of all, it gives poor people an opportunity to have a store of value that they can also spend, which the dollar is not. And second, this gives us a constitutionally protected means to avoid that central bank digital currency that will be used to enslave us utterly and totally. So what you're doing here matters, but what you're doing here is one piece of a much bigger thing you're doing. And you're the leaders. And leaders need leaders. The other leaders in your legislature need leaders. The people in your communities need leaders. It would be nice if Donald Trump just did everything for us, but since he can't, it's up to you and me. That's what you're here for. That's why you're here, and that's why I'm grateful. You have an opportunity to do something that will actually make a difference in the world. And we could actually repeal Gresham's law, that bad money drives out good. Good money could actually drive out bad. We could create a new era of prosperity for everyone. We could create a reserve currency that is actually a reserve. And we don't have to compete with the dollar to do that. We don't have to have a violent revolution in the streets. We don't have to do anything crazy. We just have to do what the Founding Fathers said we could do. So that's what I charge you to do. I charge you to go make this change because this is essential to do justice and to stop stealing from the poor. And I also ask you to think about your worldview, to think about it comprehensively, and to stand boldly like Charlie did. Sometimes when you decide to lead, you actually literally get shot, and sometimes you get canceled, and sometimes people vote against you, and sometimes all kinds of bad things happen. They happened to Moses too. They happened to Abraham too. They darn sure happened to Jesus too. And everybody else we respect. How do you want to go out? Do you want to go along to get along, or do you want to be Travis in the Alamo? Do you want to be Charlie Kirk? That's what leaders do. And so thank you for being leaders. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making a difference. And God bless this summit. You're going to have an incredible couple days, and it's really going to make a difference in the world. What you do matters. What you do counts. And somebody you don't even know is watching you.